Looking at her son, who was carefully placing groceries in the refrigerator, Karen Johnson sighed and said, "It's hard for you, Mike. I'm at a loss as to how else I can help you. Your father and I don't make that much either. We pay for the apartment. But it's easier for us. One way or another, we have a stable pension, unlike you at the factory, where there are new hardships every month." Mark sat on a chair, took his mother's hand, and replied, "No, we don't need to sell the garden. The garden is vital. There are carrots, beets and greens, cabbage, and many other things, and all this costs money in the store. Emily needs vitamins every day. So what? Are we supposed to only feed her with cereals now? No, Mom, that won't work. Even if I don't earn much now, the situation will change over time." Karen Johnson's son worked as an ordinary locksmith at the factory. At the time, he did not receive a higher education. But Mark did not regret it because he did his job perfectly, and the bosses valued him. There was an opportunity to study later, but then his family appeared, his daughter Lily was born, and there was no time for studying anymore. So they lived with his wife until she was killed under the wheels of a reckless driver. He was then convicted for only 3 years. One might say they took pity on him, and now Mark raises his daughter alone. He no longer thinks about studying, as there is no opportunity. Just to eat and pay for everything is hard enough. What extra expenses? Taking some bills out of his wallet, Karen Johnson handed them to her son. "Here, this is a little, but still something. I wanted to save up for my teeth, but oh well, when my son has problems." Such conversations with his mother often happened to Mark because she periodically brought them groceries. Looking at the clock, Karen Johnson began to gather her things. "Okay, I'll go feed your father. He's going to watch football today. He asked for hot buns. By the way, he sends you his regards and asks if you want to go fishing with him." Mark loved to sit with a fishing rod, but this time he refused. "I promised Lily to take her to the circus. You see, I feel uncomfortable when other parents can afford it, and your son has to make excuses for his daughter so as not to look ridiculous." "No, Mom. This Saturday I'm going to organize a nice walk for Lily." The daughter was happy when her father took her to the circus. For once, she had a lot of fun. Along with other kids, Lily watched the circus performances. Mark specifically borrowed a digital camera from his parents for this. He took a few shots and offered his daughter to post them on her social media. Lily looked at the shots that came out and sadly said, "You know what, Dad? Let's just print them out. I don't have that many friends in class anyway. And we have nothing to brag about to them. Let them think what they want." After these words, Mark sincerely rejoiced that he had given his daughter a good weekend, and buying cotton candy, they went home together. The beginning of March was approaching, and in some places it was already impossible to pass without rubber boots. This circumstance did not bother Mark at all, but difficult times came for his daughter. She needed to buy another pair of shoes, but just her luck. A couple of days earlier, Mark had made the next mortgage payment, which they took out while his wife was still alive, and paid the utilities. There was only enough money left to eat. Calling his mother, Mark heard unpleasant news. "Son, I'd love to help you, but your father is seriously ill. The doctors prescribed expensive medications. I don't even know how we'll get by." That same day, he and Lily visited his parents. Despite the illness, Robert sat on a chair through the pain and sat his granddaughter on his lap. "Yes, Lily, I haven't seen you in a long time. You've grown up and become beautiful like your mother, and at school you probably get all A's, or do you sometimes get C's too?" In response, Lily frowned slightly. "What are you saying, Grandpa? What C's? I'm doing well, all A's and very few B's. You'd better tell me how you feel." Robert wiped the sweat from his forehead and jokingly replied, "Oh, I'm just pretending, and the doctors all say in chorus that I'm sick, but I think they're all lying. I wanted to come visit you yesterday, but Grandma won't let me. She told me to get treatment." Of course, Mark's father was joking, but you can't hide the symptoms of illness, and soon Robert reached for the pills. He started having shortness of breath, and his face turned red. Karen Johnson helped with the medications and then took her granddaughter to the kitchen. Mark was left alone with his father. "I know, son, that you have problems. My heart is heavy. I'm ashamed that I can't help. I have a small stash. Your mother doesn't know about it. Bring me my favorite book." Mark fulfilled his request, and a minute later handed his father a collection of poems by a famous classic. "Don't get the wrong idea that I got into poetry. It's just the only book in the house that your mother isn't interested in. Here, there's very little, but maybe enough." Mark counted the bills and said, "There is one store in the city that sells good shoes. I'll try to stop by. Maybe I'll get lucky." At the same time, Mark clearly understood that his father had given him the money that he could have spent on his treatment. But Robert reasoned differently and concluded that his granddaughter needed it more. As he later told his son, "I already have one foot in the grave anyway, so whether I take the pill or not won't make much difference. Lily should look flawless, and it's not her fault that her father doesn't have enough money. I'm not blaming you, but there is a long road ahead." Mark planned to go to that store on the weekend. In the meantime, his daughter went to school without a second pair of shoes. The teachers made allowances and did not scold her, knowing that her father was already trying so that their family would not lack anything. But soon a new teacher of the English language and literature came to replace her colleague. Her colleague was retiring, and personnel urgently needed to be updated. It seemed like nothing out of the ordinary, but from the very first days, the new teacher began showing her teeth to the students. And if someone didn't do their homework well, she unhesitatingly gave them an F in their diary. Oh, how tormented were the parents back then, running to her to resolve the situation with grades. And only Lily was lucky so far because she had excellent academic performance and knowledge of the subject. The girl not only studied well, she wanted to achieve the highest scores, and almost all the teachers appreciated this. But not Jessica Miller, as the new teacher was called. She hated Lily with every fiber of her being, because she could not hook the girl and give her a bad grade. Every day she called her to the blackboard, but each time she received comprehensive answers to the material being studied. This infuriated the teacher, and she urgently needed a pretext for nitpicking. Such a pretext was quickly found when Jessica Miller was on duty at the school entrance. The students came and changed into their second shoes, but Lily, after carefully wiping her outdoor boots, passed through the turnstile. The teacher stopped her, looked into her eyes, and then took her by the hand and led her to the classroom, like a mischievous child. Lily could not even imagine what would happen to her next. Already in the classroom, when the bell rang, Jessica Miller led her to the blackboard and maliciously said, "Just look at what she wears to school. All the children wear a second pair of shoes, but Lily doesn't care about the rules. Maybe you have nothing to wear, just say so, poor girl. We'll all chip in for you as a class, right, guys?" In response, the students began to whisper, and several students laughed out loud. Lily cried and began to resist the teacher's firm grip. "Leave me alone. I just forgot my shoes at home." With undisguised malice and a sense of victory, the teacher allowed her to sit at her desk. Throughout the lesson, Lily looked through the textbook and notebook through a veil of wet eyes. The boy sitting next to her tugged at her sleeve and handed her a candy. "Take it. You need to calm down." Lily had never felt such shame in front of the whole class. As for the teacher, she rejoiced that she had managed to humiliate the girl, even if she could not give Lily a bad grade. When she got home, Lily was gloomier than a storm cloud, but her father was still at work, and that was reassuring. In the evening, when he came home, his daughter could barely conceal her depressed state. Mark intuitively sensed that something bad had happened. "Sweetheart, you've been off all evening. Did something happen? Don't tell me you didn't do your homework or you got a bad grade." Lily ran to her room in tears. Realizing he had started on the wrong foot, Mark waited a couple of minutes and knocked on the door. Reluctantly, his daughter allowed him to enter. "I'm sorry, Lily. I just had a hard day, so I said the wrong thing. How were your classes? What's new?" The girl wiped her tears and said, "I was publicly shamed today and almost called a beggar, all because I don't have a second pair of shoes." Mark was shocked. How could they allow themselves to do that? Wait, who humiliated you? Don't be silent. Were your classmates involved in this? Lily nodded, but immediately added, Not exactly. Our new English language and literature teacher made fun of me. Since she started working at our school, she tried to give a bad grade for any mistake. But she couldn't do anything with me. I always got excellent marks, so she picked on my shoes. She said we couldn't afford to buy another pair, and in front of the whole class, she offered to collect money for me. Lily cried again, but Mark hugged her and tried to calm her down. Don't worry, sweetheart. Tomorrow you'll go to school and tell that teacher that I'll meet with her and she'll find out what justice means. The daughter pulled herself together and had a hearty dinner with her father. While she was doing homework, Mark was writing something down in his notebook. Who would have thought what his meeting with Jessica Miller would turn into? In the morning, he took his daughter to school and called work himself to take the day off. With a strong desire to stand up for Lily and bring the teacher to her senses, he went to that shoe store. He got lucky. They had her size, and the total added up. After examining the purchase, Mark mentally told himself, Now let's see what you'll say about this. It was almost 11 o'clock. As for Lily, she came to school and immediately caught the eye of the English language teacher. What, still no money? Poor girl, completely impoverished. In response, Lily said, My dad is coming today, and you will find out what justice means. She didn't mention the word poverty to avoid provoking ridicule. Jessica Miller took her aside and snidely remarked, Who are you trying to scare me? Okay, let your country bumpkin dad come. We'll all have a good laugh at him together. Lily almost burst into tears. She felt so offended for her father that she barely held it together. Pulling her hand away, the girl went to class. According to the schedule, English language and literature were the third and fourth lessons. When Mark arrived at the school, he easily found the classroom where his daughter was supposed to be. He understood that class was in session, but could not wait. Hello, everyone. Lily. I brought you shoes. I hurried to surprise you. Jessica Miller expected to see some kind of simpleton, dressed cheaply and gloomily. But before she stood a man in a suit that fit him perfectly. Even the students in the class opened their mouths and stared at Mark. He turned to the teacher and said, I see by your facial expression that you are a little confused. I dare to notice that I am also slightly perplexed because you are wearing such tired clothes that my grandmother wore in distant times. You don't follow fashion at all. Lily, try on the shoes. I suppose I couldn't be wrong. His daughter came up to her father, and before taking the new shoes from his hands, she hugged him and cried, Thank you for being there for me, Dad. At that moment, even those students who had previously laughed at her fell silent and began pointing fingers at Jessica Miller. The teacher, meanwhile, was still in a state of prostration. But when she came to her senses, she shouted, Get out of the classroom! I've had enough of you lecturing me on fashion. The school principal, who happened to be passing by the classroom, heard the noise. Opening the door, she almost collided with Mark. What are you doing here? After a pause, Lily's father replied, I brought my daughter a second pair of shoes. She forgot them at home. I am very upset that she was almost called a beggar because of this. The principal turned to the students and asked, Okay, loafers, confess, who said that? In response, the entire class pointed at the teacher. Jessica Miller, I would not have expected this from you. How dare you humiliate children when you just started working here? The teacher sat down on a chair, all shrunk and red. Mark was about to leave, but the principal stopped him. I'm sorry you had to go through this, Mark. We know your family well and how hard you try for Lily. This will not happen again, and the culprit will be punished. After this, even those kids who used to tease Lily and try to hurt her in every possible way started to respect her. As for Jessica Miller, she was given a severe reprimand and kept for several hours in her core subject. As a result, a month later, she resigned voluntarily and left the walls of that school. Lily became even more proud of her father because he proved in practice that he was able to stand up for her. Subscribe to our channel and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one.